Hi everyone, I am super excited to present to you the 14th installation in our Famous Artist series. This one is all about Robert, Indiana. The purpose of this video is just to give you an overview of how I've set up the unit so that once you start it with your kiddos, you can hit the ground running. So let's dive right in. I've organized the whole thing into 4 distinct sessions, ideally 40 minutes each, but I've purposely tried to make every single part of this unit modifiable in case you need to change things up to meet your needs. So the first session is all about just presenting a digital storybook where you are going to be exposing kids to a ton of works by Robert, Indiana, the ones that fall into the two-dimensional category. And really the whole focus of that digital storybook is to get the kids thinking about typography and just the idea of letters and words written in an artistic way, and kind of thinking about the shapes inside letters and around letters and how letters fit together. For a lot of them, they spend so much time at school, learning and focusing on how letters are formed. And this may be the first time that they're really thinking about how letters can be artistically formed, and how the art of typography itself is an art form. So after you get through the digital storybook, you're going to present 2 kind of typography-based exercises. They're kind of choice set up. So you present both and you allow the kids to choose one or the other. If time permits, of course, they're welcome to do both. But the first option looks like this. And as you can see, it has the word love written 4 different times. And what you want them looking at with this one is just the differences in the shapes between these letters and inside these letters, so that they're really getting a strong sense of how typography can affect the overall look of a word, or the feel of a word. The other option for this first session is a blank box. So in this case, you would be inviting kids to pick their own word and space it out. If they wanted to choose the word love, they would write L-O-V-E. But what they would be doing in this one is thinking very artistically about the shapes of those letters, trying to get them really big, trying to get them to take up that space, and really put this compositionally together within our artist mindset. So you'll let them work on that through the end of the first session. In the second session, and by the way, they can work with that, work on that with crayons, markers, colored pencils. Really, any flat medium should work. Even watercolor paint would be fine. But in the second session, you're going to shift their focus towards his 3-dimensional work. You'll be exposing them to a lot of his word sculptures, and this is where you really kind of help them transition into what will become the studio project for this unit. And that's all about creating a word art sculpture. So you're going to walk them through the beginning steps of the studio project in session 2, and then they're going to finish up the studio project in session 3. So ultimately, here's where we're headed. So we're trying to make a word, but if you look at this carefully, it's kind of 3-dimensional. That's on there with a product called Model Magic, if you're not familiar. What they do in the first, or studio session 2, is create this base, and it's just made out of popsicle sticks. So you're going to basically be having them lay down on the table 2 popsicle sticks, and then I recommend that you go, run around and put a line of glue on each one of these, and then have the kids set up. They should be able to fit 12 popsicle sticks. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 13. So that's why I say what I do is I just put a big pile of popsicle sticks in the middle of the workspace and let them grab as they go. But you're going to have them kind of create this wooden base, and luckily you're just using school glue for this, and it dries pretty quickly. So as soon as they get that kind of set up, you're going to quickly transition into the idea of adding color to it. So you don't need to color both sides. You're just going to be coloring one side. And if watercolor felt overwhelming, of course you could do that with markers as well. The kids, in my experience, love the idea of painting wood. And the other thing I notice when the kids work on it is sometimes popsicle sticks are, they must be coated with something. I have no idea what, but you get more vibrant colors if you do maybe 2 layers, 3 layers of watercolor paint. Sometimes the paint kind of beads up. It almost feels like there's something on there making the wood resist the paint. But it gives way eventually. I mean, the paint will sink in, and ultimately it seems to adhere just fine. But just heads up about that. You could paint with any other kind of paint too if you wanted to do acrylic paint or craft paint of any kind. That would work too. And at the end of the session, ultimately this is what we're aiming for. They've created the wooden base and they've added color to it. So then when they transition into the third session, that's where you're going to really be working with Model Magic. And like I said, if you haven't worked with Model Magic, it's a product by Crayola. It's just a nice kind of halfway point between Play-Doh and clay. And what I love about Model Magic is that it is not real messy at all. The kids don't even have the feeling like they need to wash their hands after working with it, which will ultimately save you a ton of time. It does for me at least. So you're going to basically be handing each child a ping pong ball or golf ball size portion of Model Magic, and you're going to present to them, well, in session 3 you present a couple fun facts first, but then you're going to present a sequence of steps that they're going to kind of navigate through independently. The first one has them taking that little chunk of Model Magic and breaking it into 4 parts, 4 equal-ish parts, and then they're going to kind of roll each one of those into a little kind of snake, call it an earthworm, call it whatever you want. You can model the technique of rolling it on the table or rolling it between their hands. But basically you want that Model Magic to kind of be in a linear form, so that then when they lay it on the table, they could kind of real easily see how that would be kind of manipulated to create letters. So they are going to pick a 4-letter word of their own. Now, if that seems above the level of where your kids are at, you certainly can pick the word for them, have them all do the word love, or all do the word hope, or some other word. They can do their name if they happen to have a 4-letter name. It's funny, I was talking to my husband about this one, and he said, why does it have to be 4 letters? Robert Indiana's words are 4 letters, with the 2 on top and the 2 on the bottom, but I guess, I don't know, it just didn't occur to me that they could be any other length than 4 letters. But if you have a kid who's really ambitious and wants to do their name, and their name happens to have 6 letters, I mean, hey, I don't see why they couldn't do that. But I typically like to structure it just so they don't feel overwhelmed with choices. So I tell them to pick a 4-letter word and sculpt the letters, and then I've done it a couple different ways. I have had them sculpt the letters, and then they just one by one stick them on the wooden base. You do 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. I have also recently, with a group of kids, what we tried to do was, I don't know if you can tell here, we kind of used our fingers to manipulate these and attach them to each other. The letters are all connected to each other first. Just another option to be thinking about. It kind of falls more in line with the way Robert Indiana's letters were all kind of connected and really feeling stacked. But if the letters float, that's okay. They are thrilled to be working with the Model Magic regardless. But the one other advantage to working with them all connected is that you minimize the likelihood that an individual letter is going to accidentally get flipped the wrong way. That was one issue that in the last session I did this with kids. We seemed to run into more than I've ever run into it before, where they had the letters all sitting on the table, and then they went to put glue on them without thinking that they're going to then have to flip the letter over to attach it to the base. So maybe model that to the kids as you're going, but it seemed to help once we connected all the letters. Then they really understood, okay, the glue goes on the back and we attach that. If a piece goes on backwards, it's not the end of the world. They can there's quite a bit of drying time involved with that glue, and so they can't always pick it back up, flip it over. The watercolor does respond to the moisture in the glue and may pick up a tiny hint of color if you're flipping it over, but I don't normally hear one single child complaining about that. I tend to have them leave the letters white, but if you wanted to have the kids take, that extra step and add color to the letters, of course you could do that too. I like the white because it has a lot of contrast and really helps, I think, viewers understand that this was really all about the word. Anyway, that will bring you to the end of session 3, and when you are done with session 3, you basically just need to find a place to leave these to dry. The Model Magic stiffens over time, but what's cool about the Model Magic as opposed to other types of modeling materials is that it kind of partially stiffens. It always has this sort of foamy quality to it, but it does lose its plasticity, so you can't like take it off and reform it into something else. But it always has a little bounce to it that you don't get when you're working with clay or even Play-Doh. So that would take you to the end of session 3. If your kids are getting done early, you can kind of play it by ear. You could put some early finisher options. I threw a couple in, and they're these. They're more like coloring page setups. And so you have the option of doing the word love or the word hope. And again, you could put one stack out at session 3 and one stack out at the end of session 4, or you could let them all choose. That's totally up to you. And so for session 4, which is our final session in this unit, you are going to have them take care of one last step with the creation of the sculpture. At this stage, at the end of session 3, you've got it kind of like this, and it just needs time to dry. Well, in session 4, what you want to walk them through is a real quick process to kind of make this thing prop up, because as is, it just sort of, it's someone could attach a hook or something to the back, but otherwise it doesn't really have that kind of stand-up sculptural quality to it. So what I came up with was the idea of adding, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's one extra popsicle stick added. That happens in session 4. We just put a little dot of glue there and a little dot of glue there and add an extra popsicle stick. And then you take another stick, and the idea is that you would kind of position this one under here and then prop it up. Now, I noticed as I was experimenting with this that if you do that on a real slick surface, the tables in my art room are kind of finished wood, and this this popsicle stick tends to like slip right out from under it. But if I put, let's see if I can do this while, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Let's try. If you put it on a piece of craft foam, even a piece of construction paper, it just needs like a tiny bit of traction in order to get that popsicle stick not to slip, and then it seems to work. Okay, we'll see if it's going to let me. Yes, okay. So that's what we're talking about. So it's just sort of propped under there, but it's obviously extremely delicate. So if you, I like to prop them up so that we can have our little art show, and then I kind of like it remaining loose because then they can kind of just package it like this to take it home. You can have them put them in Ziploc bags or a paper bag, and then they can kind of prop it up when they get home again. I think that if you wanted it a little more stable and something you were going to put on display, say in a media center or anywhere really, you might want to consider hot gluing the end of that, or even a little sticky tack or something right there, or even Model Magic probably would do the trick, and just kind of adhering that. Piece of tape could also work, but once you do that, now you've got this stick kind of sticking out, and that is not the kind of thing that will travel well. So if you're asking a kid to take it in that state home, the survivability on that extra stick is not looking good, I think, if you have it sticking out like that. So that's why I prefer to leave it loose for my circumstance, but everybody's situation is different, and so if you like the idea of making it more permanent and gluing that extra stick in place, or if you want to come up with a different way to kind of prop it up, have at it. So for the end, or following that little extra detail, that doesn't take long to set up. You can then do a digital lesson review. It goes through, I include a series of questions and answers that really focus on stuff that was discussed in the session 1 digital storybook. I put in some blank slides if you wanted to customize a review based on some extra stuff that you may have covered with them. That should be something you can modify real easily. And then we have an art show. So like I was mentioning, I like to have everyone prop theirs up, and we kind of put them all on a couple tables, and then we all stand on the other side of the tables. And I include some discussion suggestions, just little prompts to kind of get the kids thinking reflectively about how the projects look, and getting them to look at other people's work instead of just their own. And if you wanted to, again, customize that discussion or just let it kind of form organically, that's totally okay. I tend to wing it in those conversations in the art shows, but if you've got a group of very quiet kids and they need a little prompting, stuff, little questions and suggestions for things for them to think about can be really helpful. So the final component is a self-assessment, and that's going to look like this, and we'll just kind of go through the little 4 components of this self-assessment. The first one says, I used craft sticks and glue to construct a wooden base for my word art. So that's really all about that session 2 studio component. The second one says, I painted my wooden base with watercolor. That is also happening in session 2. And then the third one says, I sculpted a word out of Model Magic and attached it to my painted base. So that's what's happening in session 3. Now you could take it further. Did I get it to prop up? You could have them add some indicators down at the bottom if you wanted to. But the fourth one here says, I used my materials carefully and tried my best on this project. So that's where you're getting craftsmanship, effort, that kind of thing. They are rating themselves on all 4 of these components with a smiley face, a kind of plain face, or an unhappy face. And it's a self-assessment. So it's just meant for them to be thinking reflectively. Typically, at least in my setting, we don't grade them or anything like that. So this is just a little opportunity for them to kind of be thinking, where were we? What did we do in this project? How far did we get? How did I do on each component? There's a little spot for comments at the bottom where you could, customize your feedback to kids if you have the opportunity to do that. If printing is an issue, as I've said with many of our other projects, you could also always just display this document on some kind of projector, or if you have a smart board or something like that, even a digital iPads, that kind of thing, and have kids walk through this without actually printing this out, and they could, respond to this without writing anything down if you need to save ink or paper, or you just don't have access to a printer. And so that brings us to the end. Again, if you wanted to toss in an early finisher option, you could pull back out those coloring sheets and offer them really any of the 4, because technically there would be 4 total in terms of pages that they are just kind of extra supplemental things with this unit. And so you could make any of those available really at any point during the lesson if you have kids who are finishing fast and needing a little extra stuff to engage with. So I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I hope that you will agree to share what you've made. Photographs are always fun for the group. We'd love to see how you approached it. Of course, variations are encouraged and welcome, so please don't be shy about any of that. If you have any questions about any of it, or you just want to get some feedback from the group, that's what we're here for. So I hope you have fun with this one. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.